The system finds a way to cope. We live in a self-correcting body-mind system. It's like it's innately resilient, and it finds ways to be okay when it's not okay. So, take away the drugs and I'll just find something else, if I don't replace it with something.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Jason Shiers, a psychotherapist and certified transformative coach, and we're going to be talking to him about addiction, mental health, eating disorders, and a variety of other topics. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, read synopses, see photos of my guests, little bio on myself. There's also a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. As I said, my guest today is Jason Shiers, and we journey to England to speak with him. He is a psychotherapist, and through his own personal journey of being medicated at 9 years old, he began a long struggle with eating disorders, addiction, and mental health issues. And through his own work on himself and working with other people, he has developed a very unique approach to dealing with these topics, and he explains all that very, very well about how to overcome addictions, the connection between mental health and happiness, his eating disorders, parenting, teen mental health. He is straightforward, honest, and very open about his own struggles, how he arrived at this point in his life after many decades. So here he is. This is Jason Shiers. Good morning to me, Jason, and good evening to you in Manchester and in the UK, which is a wonderful thing for me to be able to travel all across the world via the internet. And I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Nice to be here too. I like the look of your background, though. It looks kind of more appealing than my window,
Yeah. Well, it's a virtual background, so this is not my. It's a Hawaiian beach with palm trees swaying in the breeze. It comes with the Zoom platform, so I just throw it up there because it's better than my room. So you have an interesting story. Everyone on my show has an interesting story. They wouldn't be in the healing field. Let's say you're the way I describe myself as a failed party animal. I think that probably you are one of those people too, from what I could gather from you getting out of your addiction issues, mental health issues, and so the party ended. And where did you land?
The partying was only part of it, really. I was on self-destruct from a very early age, so the partying came kind of partway through as an attempt to escape the destruction. Like partying was kind of like the next best thing as a way to stop the crime and chaos that I was involved in, but it didn't really touch the side so much as the destructive stuff. So I kind of went back to destruction, I think for a little while until I became too sick and tired to continue that,
So you're saying this started, I guess I was reading something around 9 years old, something was going on?
Yeah, I was like thrown into the psychiatric system at 9 years old, given medication and diagnosed as a depressed, but like, I guess there no one took into consideration that I'd basically lost both parents. One actually to a tragic accident. My father was killed when I was a young boy, and my mother, she struggled to cope with it. So, pretty much was left to my own devices to cope. And as you know, as everyone knows, children are innately resilient at finding ways of coping, whether they're destructive, socially acceptable, or completely random. We find a way to cope as children, and mine was, food and and stealing money and being off the wall. That was my way of coping.
Yeah. I mean, it makes complete sense when you think about that level of one, pain, and two, abandonment that happens to a kid. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you had major issues because of that. Now, your mother also passed away at that time?
She didn't pass away, but she was there physically. I guess in a way, in my work, I see it as almost worse, because she was there physically, but that was it,
So she couldn't handle.
I couldn't get anything, Yeah, she struggled herself with being left with two children, I guess, and that was her way of coping was to work, and she just became engulfed and immersed in her work,
So there's a lot of ways to shut off feelings, obviously, and work is a very popular one, and it's actually praised way overpraised.
Yeah.
Because, there's this financial result usually, or what a hard worker. And it really, to me, is about some kind of a balance. But if you're in that much pain, I guess, the survival instincts are pretty strong. And obviously yours were to go in the direction you went. And how did it sort of end that you wanted to, where did you find yourself when, the drugs didn't work and the mental health issues were, starting to get too big to handle? What was the point that you, I guess, surrendered to the fact that I got to do it different?
Yeah, I think there was multiple awakenings or points of surrender or realizations or giving up, whatever you want to call it, of just, perhaps the first time was coming out of jail for the last time, just the act of writing a letter and asking for help, even though the letter got brushed under the carpet and ignored, but there was me saying, I can't do this on my own. I need to find some way out of here. And then I think it was perhaps a year after that I finally went into 12-step rehabilitation when I was 23, and which was 28 years ago. And that's when I stopped taking drugs and alcohol. But addiction continued. It was like, I got this different relationship with drugs and alcohol. I was kind of committed. I was not going to do that again. But everything else, the food came back stronger than ever. The addiction to dysfunctional relationships, to changing my body on the outside, to going to the gym, to finding money, all those things, because really just taking the drugs away, which were the coping mechanism, and not really understanding from a deeper, more spiritual perspective who I was or what was going on, what everything was in service of. It made sense, like you said before, the system finds a way to cope. We live in a self-correcting body-mind system, it's like it's innately resilient and it finds ways to be okay when it's not okay. So, take away the drugs and I'll just find something else, if I don't replace it with something.
It really is remove and replace. It's just what we replace with, I think, is really where the change starts to come. If you replace, I always look at addiction as kind of like, that game Whack-A-Mole.
Yeah.
Where you push one mole down, another one comes up and you hit it and it goes down. And if you don't replace, the unhealthy ones with healthy ones, you're going to keep getting the unhealthy ones popping up. And inevitably, what I've noticed is when people eliminate drugs and alcohol, other issues or other types of addictions or ways of not dealing with feelings come up. Food is a big one. Gambling, sex, there's a million things to distract from that uncomfortable feeling. And so I know that you went into psychotherapy and you've really spent the last couple of decades dedicating yourself to not only yourself, but to helping other people. So can you talk a little bit about that, how that after age 23, what happened when you got sober and the period of time between that and becoming a psychotherapist and what you've learned.
You know, whack-a-mole is a great metaphor, you know, for explaining what happens with addiction when it's not replaced with something. And for some people, because we're all completely different in our conditioning and our experience, in our traumas and our stuff that happens before we pick up drugs as a solution. You know, it's like that. Just going to 12 steps is enough. You know, it's kind of like there's nothing more, and they're fine. They live a good life after that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to say there's one right way or there isn't, you know, but for me it wasn't enough, you know, and I continued to be, I had an endless seeking feeling inside of me, you know, and around the 12 steps, people are very quick to give advice. So everyone would say to me, you need to stop seeking. That's your problem. If you could stop seeking, then you'd be okay. And it's like, have you ever tried to stop seeking? I mean, you can't stop seeking through will, you know, you can't will yourself to stop speaking. It's like, it's basically an indicator that something's missing inside, and it's like more of a spiritual solution is required than just a filling with. We seek in the wrong places, like like sex, relationships, money, anything in the outside world, changing our bodies, changing our looks, doing anything. I mean, in my food addiction, I had 7 cosmetic surgeries trying to change the outside of my body because I felt so unhappy on the inside. So I had an endless emptiness inside of me, you know, which was left from the trauma of losing my dad as a small boy. But, you know, I never looked in that direction. I didn't understand the implications that early childhood trauma has on the body and the mind. You know, it's like in adult life and relationships. So psychotherapy was my seeking, you know. I thought I'd become a therapist to fix myself, you know, to help me stop seeking, as everyone kept saying I needed to do. And, you know, I went through, I mean, I have a long list of credentials in psychotherapy, different types of modalities and different trainings and things. But at the end of it, all that training, you know, I sat there and they said, okay, you know, you can open your own practice now. You're qualified in this, you're qualified in that. You've had so many years of training. And I thought, you know, I can't help anyone. I'm still miserable. And in fact, all the therapists I know, they're still miserable too. And actually, if you knew them really, like they tell you the stuff that they tell me in confidence, you wouldn't really go to them for help because like they're still up to no good behind the scenes.
I'm laughing because I just think there's only so far a human can go until they're just a human.
Exactly. They're all having the human experience, but like, you know, and trying to find ways to cope with that, you know, and as I was too, I'm not sitting in judgment. I was no better, you know, I was unhappy, miserable, still had that eternal emptiness and still looking for a solution, you know, to make myself more happy, to find that. And after that, I mean, I did everything I could find. I did the Landmark Forum. I did the Hoffman process. I did silent meditations. I did all of Tony Robbins. I flew around the world going to Tony Robbins events. And, you know, I was just really, in one way, I was resigned, you know, like my internal experience, I was kind of resigned to never finding peace or happiness. And another way, on my external experience, I was continuously seeking, searching, having this relationship with food and then diet and then the gym, then toxic relationships, then back to food and back to diet and so on. And, you know, going to therapy myself. I'd been in therapy myself for decades. You know, it's kind of like different types of therapists. And, you know, you would have said if I came in a room that had a pretty dark energy and you noticed me, everybody noticed me, but not for the right reasons because I looked so heavy and so empty, you know. So as a therapist, I could sit in the dark with anyone, but none of us knew where the light switch was. You know, it's like I could be present with you in your pain and your suffering, in all that stuff. You know, I was very good at just being there with somebody, but I didn't know how to point somebody to the experience of joy or happiness or peace of mind because I'd never experienced it myself. So that's why I kept searching, you know. And what happened was, perhaps about 7 years ago, I was watching by a serendipitous experience, you know, it's like where somebody had given me a login to something and I was meant to rip off this video basically to share with a group of people. And I logged into this portal and there was a video called The Path of Effortless Change by Michael Neal. And I was just in love with the word effortless, because my life had been anything but effortless. In fact, it had been so heavy and so effortful, and I'd done so much and tried so much, and I was exhausted, from life. And I watched this. I didn't plan to watch this video, The Path of Effortless Change. I planned to record it or steal it in one way or the other. And I couldn't. So I had to watch it and screen record it. So I set up this little screen recorder where I had to listen to it and have it on. So I got a separate computer and I played it next to me while I was working on my main screen. But I kept finding myself mesmerized with the content of this video. And I was thinking, I don't know what this guy's talking about, but I really need to know more about it. A year later, I found myself at his house in LA and going for a 3-day sort of mini event at his house with 5 other people. And in those 3 days, my life completely changed. I had an experience where I found such a sense of peace within myself. At the end of it, I was kind of sat at the back of this Airbnb that I'd rented out for these 3 days in LA. And I was looking out over this green valley. It was about 5 o'clock on a Friday evening. The sun was setting and I was listening to the birds, and I was so quiet inside. I was so peaceful. And it was like, and I was thinking to myself, my life doesn't feel like I'm spinning plates right in this minute. It doesn't feel like I've got the relationship plate and the weight plate and the food plate and all this stuff. And it's like, and I've never felt this sense of calmness that I've got within myself, this sense of peace. And I just felt so free, for the first time. And I thought, all the seeking that I had, that I talked about earlier, all this seeking that I had my whole life, this is what I've been seeking, this experience of feeling home within myself.
Wow. What happened in that 3 days that brought you to that feeling, do you think?
That's what I teach in my work now, and it's in a way, it's what I point people to, I guess. And it's like, it was the experience of my true self, what I call the experiencing of true self, like the true self, who we are, our mental health, not mental illness as classified by the system, but mental health, a place that I would describe as a part inside of us that's never damaged, cannot be broken, can't be lost, never scratched, nothing wrong with it, always there, always available, that I'd lost touch with, and I was thinking myself up as a concept on a daily basis. And I was experiencing my life through the eyes of that concept that I was thinking up every day. And like, in my own mind, I was the story of this small boy who'd lost his dad, who was an addict, unfixable. Because this is what happens when you go into the system, right? It's kind of like all your normal human response, which even you said, that sounds like a normal thing to do, considering like, finding a way to cope with adverse circumstances. All your normal ways of coping, even though they're not so acceptable, get pathologized by the system, right? Yeah. So you get given these labels. Oh, you're depressed, you've got mental health issues, you're an addict. It's like you go to 12 steps, you get told in rehab, you get told you're an addict, you can't drink or use drugs ever again, one day at a time, and you have to do these things to be okay. So the story, the identity that we're living as an illusion in our own mind, we're creating, and then we're adding things to it all the way along. Oh, I've got this and I'm broken. I've got that and I'm broken. Oh, I can identify with 5 different fellowships. I go to OA, I go to GA, I go to NA, I go to AA. It's kind of like all these things are my identity, right? And it's kind of like, it's who I think I am. So any given day I get up and I assume the role of my identity via my thinking. That happens in my mind. And someone just said to me, and he just said to me that one of the things he said to me was that you don't have to listen to your thinking. It's not who you are. It's just random transient energy that passes through your mind at any given time, And it was like, I just had this experience of going, just seeing this kind of ticker tape of noise going, you're shit, you're worthless, you're no good, you're not this, you'll never do this, you'll never amount to anything, you're an addict, you've got trauma, you've got all this stuff. And I just thought, yeah, what if that's not true? What if that's not who I am? What if that's just, this noise that goes through my head, it's kind of like, and I just felt free of that story, I just felt completely free of it. Like there was nowhere to get to, nothing to achieve. I didn't have to fix myself. I wasn't broken anymore. It's kind of like, I just saw the futility of of the system, how the system had innocently installed all these pathologized normal human responses to adverse circumstances into me. I took them on, assumed the role, and played it out in my life. And I just thought, I'm free right now. It's kind of like, and I tell you now how I can quantify this, like, and that may sound for anyone that's stuck in the system or struggling a little bit far-fetched. Now, at that point, I'd had 40 years of eating disorders. I'd been in the psychiatric system for 40 years. I'd been in 12 steps for 22 years. It's kind of like, I'd been in therapy for 20 years. I've never been back to therapy. I actually in fact, I would tell a lie. I went back once. I called my therapist from LA and said, I don't need therapy anymore. and I went and she couldn't understand me. She said, it's too soon. You're not thinking straight. And I didn't go back to therapy. I radically changed my own practice of working with people. I never went back to psychiatric care. I don't have an eating disorder anymore. And I haven't had one since that moment. And it's like, and my life has radically changed in so many ways since that moment.
I remember somebody saying to me, and I didn't know what they meant. I do now, and you just said it. They said to me, "You're not your story." And I was like, what does that mean? I'm not my story. And I know exactly what it means now. It's that part of you that's untouchable by external events, that is eternal. That's basically, I'm going to just say it. It's love. It's really, it's the love energy of the universe, which I think is the basic vibration and frequency of life. Underneath it all, that's what it is. And if we can tap into that, however that works, and I love the idea of the ticker tape. I think that was a great analogy, because that endless mind chatter that is programmed and constantly reinforced by society and other people can be really crazy making. It really makes you feel like the I got tos and I have tos, and this is what I am, and this is how I am in terms of other people and things. It can really be this endless loop of dissatisfaction. It's like and it's just so it doesn't make any sense that humans do that, but we do it to ourselves, but we'd think it's happening to us.
I describe it often like, if you've got a raid, once you've stopped paying attention to it, because many people are like, well, how do I change my thinking? There's all this stuff about positive thinking and negative thinking, and how do I get, you don't need to change anything about your thinking. You just have a different relationship with your thinking. It's kind of like, it's like you said at the very start, it's serious without the seriousness. It's noise. You don't have to take it so seriously and feel it so heavy. It's almost like you got a radio on in the background. It's kind of like you've actually forgotten that it's there. I still have that shit flowing through my mind, but I don't pay any attention to it. I know it's not relevant to who I am. It doesn't necessarily go away. It quietens down a lot. And sometimes it's louder than others, but I have a different relationship with it. I don't take it seriously. It's quite comical. I mean, in the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, he talks about it as the unwanted roommate, that you would never take advice from. It's kind of like the guy who keeps going on and on and on and on. And it's kind of like, he's the last person you'd ever go to for any advice about yourself. It's like that,
Yeah, it's almost like that voice sometimes will, if it was another person saying the same thing to you that you're saying to yourself, you'd punch them in the face. You go, shut the fuck up. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Can't talk to me that way. I'm the only one that can talk to me that way. The whole idea of coming into being and then having to put it in the correct perspective, the voices that the mind chatter does, and realize that isn't really what's important, even though it's happening and it feels real. I used to think, well, I'm a smart guy. If I'm thinking it, it must be true. And there's so much of it that wasn't. And probably today there's going to be a few things that aren't either.
There's a deeper understanding at play, that I kind of like to talk about. And that is like knowing that we came into the world, like with no software installed. It's kind of like just needing warmth and love and food. That was it. And it was like there's no separation at that point. We're born, we go through the birthing process. We're born. It's like we don't even have a name or an identity. We don't know ourselves as I, like I am 50, I am Jason, I am this, I am that. We're just a seamless flow of sensations and perceptions. Then the idea of separation is installed into us first. We're given a name, then we're given at some point in the world, it changes. We absorb the behavior and the circumstance and the conditioning around us in our cultural experience, religious experience, family environment, all those things. And we start to build this identity that I talked about. It's like, and then this identity looks like it needs to get somewhere to be okay. I need to get something to be okay. I need to be something other than me, somewhere other than here to be okay. So the illusion, the rat race, what I call the rat race, the illusion of myself and bettering myself is installed into me. I wasn't born with it. It's not essential to who I am. The part of me that's essential to who I am is the part that's untouchable, unbreakable, can't be damaged or broken by my experience in life as a separate human. So, I'm thinking myself up in this experience, this illusion. Life is happening only in one place, inside my own mind. It's not happening outside. It's not the experiences or the circumstances or the objects or the people or the relationships. It's me. It's what's happening inside of me. It's my thought and perception that's creating my whole experience. And I in this experience, I'm this flawed individual with all these labels that's given to me. But that's not true. That's what I woke up to realize that it's all perfect. It's all kind of like a misunderstanding. That's why I called my own podcast Misunderstandings of the Mind, because it's really the deeper seeing of the deeper nature of the human experience, the truth of who we are beyond all the pathologized labels and stuff that no one has ever found peace in, really. It's kind of like there's an endless searching and seeking until we understand our deeper spiritual nature, and see the truth of who we are beyond thought and perception, beyond human creation, beyond endless innovation. Just the simpleness of the human experience. Like you said, it's all love. In my coaching work, it's like most people got this idea that there's some place to get to. Like I'm going, no, this is it. This is life now, today. This is our life. It's like, and when you start living life as if now is the moment, it's kind of like there's not some future destination called happiness, or made it or got there. It's kind of like in my book, which isn't released yet, but one of the chapters was called "When Will We Get There and Where Is There?" And it's like it's really about this thing that we're all part of the conditioning. What I talked about is like it's installed in us, this idea, like we're asked what we want to be before we understand who we are, and it's kind of like I want to achieve, I want to get somewhere, I want more money, I want a bigger house, bigger car, better relationship, more weight loss. There's an endless list of things that people think they're going to find satisfaction in at a later date. Meanwhile, life is happening now. And I like, there's a video called Life is Not a Journey by Alan Watts. And I don't know if you listen to Alan Watts, but yeah, it's beautiful. He says like, life is like dancing or singing. He says, you don't dance your steps and say, yay, I got to the last step. It's kind of like, I've finished now. He said, you're in the moment. You're enjoying the process. The same when you're singing, you're not longing for the last note. You're just enjoying the process of singing. And that's what life is like. It's when you see beyond the suffering, the story, the identity, and all the things that you've been told, and just feel the beauty of the present moment, then that's feeling alive, that's feeling present in the moment.
I was interviewing somebody last week, and she mentioned, I'd never heard it put this way, but she called it destination addiction. Which I thought was a really interesting way to look at that. As soon as I get from here to there, then I can relax and be okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're missing every moment up till that point. And who's to say when you get to that point, then
it's going to be happily ever after.
The kids are the best teachers of that. I have two small children. Well, one's quite a teenager now, but the other one's little. And, he just plays in the dirt, rolls around in the shit. He doesn't care. It's kind of like he's just there enjoying himself. He's got nowhere to get to, nothing to do. He teaches me so much about how to have fun. He's got no shame, no feelings of wonder what people will think of me or any of this stuff, that all these things that we've had installed. He's just like running around. He'd like, sometimes he's only 6, but sometimes he just comes in, he just strips off all his clothes and runs around naked. He doesn't care. It's kind of like he's just enjoying the experience of his life as it is. None of those things have yet to be installed in him. And you can see children are such a great teacher of how to be in the moment, and they also, for me, give me that reflection of how many ideas I've got in my mind about what it takes to be okay, what I need to do, what I should be doing, how I shouldn't be doing, blah, 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 all that stuff that's again, belief-driven, thought-driven ideas that I just live in the feeling of,
Yeah, kids are so great that way. I think that's why we love them so much, is that we know somewhere that we've forgotten how to do what they just do naturally and that we used to be when we came in. I had an experience. I just remembered this while you were talking. I used to draw quite a bit when I was a kid, 10, 11, 12 mainly. And I remember being immersed in this drawing at this table, really in it. I was in the paper, and I was in the pen, the pencil, whatever it was. And my mother called me from the other room, and this voice in my head went, "She's calling Bob." It kind of freaked me out because, and I remember being like, not real happy about being pulled out, but it was almost like the real me was telling the other real me, if there was two of us, like that she's calling the fake me Bob. It was a really strange moment that I never forgot, but I knew that I was in something that was real and I was being pulled out of it. And it was actually the voice was talking to me in my head. So it was cool. It was cool, but it was scary because there was nobody to talk to that and talk about that stuff with. Well, I can tell you this now, but if I had gone to my mother and said, "This is what just happened," she wouldn't have even understood what I was saying if I could have articulated it.
One of my favorite teachers is Rupert Spira. He's a non-duality spiritual teacher, and he says, like, he uses the experience of sport. He says, like, when you're playing sport, there's no you, there's no you there. It's kind of, and I think it sounds similar to what you were talking about. It's like when you're just in the flow, it's only in hindsight you can look back and, like, let's say you're asking I think he uses the experience of a football or something. He says, like, if you ask a footballer what they did, they'll say, yeah, I did this and I did that, in hindsight afterwards. But during the moments, there's no thinking about running, passing, doing, it's just all completely in flow. They're just in the moment of the experience. It's only in hindsight when they can look back and kind of claim that there was an I there doing something. It's like, but while you're in it, it's just happening.
So when people come to you for assistance, I'm assuming, just by the way you're talking, is that your job, you probably feel that you want to get somebody to the place where they don't need to come to you anymore, is probably what I'm assuming is your goal. How do you approach some of your therapy? I know everyone's a little different, but is there some basic ways that you handle the situations? Let's say somebody comes to you, they've got a eating disorder, or they're addicted to something, or they're just miserable.
It starts off with a fundamental knowing that they're okay beyond their thinking, that there's a part of them that's absolutely perfect, same as there is in me and there is in all human beings, that the love in us is only veiled by our own thinking about ourselves. And with the knowing, armed with the knowing of that's absolutely true, then it's a different conversation to, I'm not adding further labels. I'm not adding further things for them to do. I'm not adding more, ideas about themselves that's wrong with them. I'm letting them, I'm giving them permission to be human and to be present in whatever is, without giving it a label, without saying what's wrong with them, without fixing it, in the knowing that when they see beyond the story of themselves, there's a place in them that's innately okay, that's always been. I call it the difference between feeding somebody a fish and teaching them how to fish. It's gonna help them for a lifetime. It's like you said, as a therapist before, it would be, oh, that's going to take a couple of years. It's a big job. And it's kind of like, and as now, it's kind of like, sometimes in an hour, sometimes in 4 weeks or 6 weeks, people are having a different experience of themselves in their life. And I'm not talking ever, or very rarely, unless somebody asks, about the addicted thing or the food thing or anything like that. People just come back to me at some point and go, that food thing, I'm not doing that anymore. And it's kind of like, and I've never stopped doing that in 20 years. And all of a sudden now it just doesn't seem like a good idea. And that makes complete sense. You can't tackle addiction at the level of behavior because it's just a solution to a deeper issue, a deeper misunderstanding of who we are. And when people wake up and have a joyful experience of their life, they look forward to not knowing. They look forward to the awe and wonder of life, to the love of and connection with people. They don't need to medicate their experience anymore. You can't do anything you can't tackle it at the level of behavior because it really is just an innate coping mechanism. It's an innocent attempt to quieten the mind. All addictive behavior or processes or substance use is really a simple attempt to quieten. It's an attempt to end seeking, because the seeking's happening inside of us. And we believe that if I reach for, do, take, or do this action, this experience that I'm having inside of myself will stop, right? It's kind of like, because that's what it is. We can't be with the seeking feeling within us. So we do the behavior in order to stop the seeking. We have an experience of calmness or it's stopping, and then we do it again, and it becomes this repetitive process. But if I'm having a joyful experience of being me, I don't need to medicate that. I don't want to medicate that. No one ever got up and said, oh my God, what an amazing day. It's so beautiful outside. I think I'm going to take crack cocaine today. Nobody does that,
No. Yeah. If you're, I was always I was always secretly envious of people that didn't need to do some of the things I needed to do to quiet my mind, that they were okay. And I would look at them with like wonder, like, why are you okay? And I'm not, that I need to do these things. I need to get loaded, today because I'm uncomfortable, but you're not. Are you not seeing the world correctly? Like that was actually, I used to believe that, like, if you saw things as clearly as I did, not as incorrectly as I did, as clearly as I did, you'd be getting loaded every day too. So you are coming out with a book soon, you said. Is that when is that happening?
Yeah, well, it's about 35,000 words in, and I've been writing it for a long time, and I've been my understanding has been deepening all along of the mind-body system, and seeing of my own stuff, the trauma-related stuff, how that persists even after realization, even after awareness of true nature, what happens in the body and those things that, often people are left with. The spiritual conversation, mind-based conversation doesn't really touch the side of the somatic and the nervous system response stuff to trauma. So, there's been later evolution in the writing of the book and, my addiction treatment program and stuff. So it's, it's going to come out when I'm ready to
good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it's done.
When it's done. Yeah. I've been really calm with it because I have this human condition that tells me I'm not doing it quick enough and I need to do it quicker. And if I don't do it soon, blah, blah, and all that nonsense that we listen to in our own mind. But yeah, it's really good. I'm happy with it. There's some stuff I want to change and add to it. And I'm pretty sure early next year, I'm going to release it. I want to put some time into it soon. And it's mostly done.
That's a great feat to write a book. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So congrats on that.
It's been a couple of years in the making.
Yeah, sure. Some people take decades to write something, depending on what it is.
I guess when you're pointing to something that's not mainstream as well, it's kind of like people have become so caught up in the story of themselves and what they've been told by their psychiatrist, their psychologist, their therapist, and so on. You know, the belief in, you know, the pathologized labels and so on that they've been given. They're so connected to those identities that when you're writing something that's non-mainstream, you know, it's kind of like you come up against resistance. And because people's identity are wrapped up in what they've created, you know. So it's, you know, I've been through a lot of that myself. I've been through a lot of that in talks that I've given and so on with professionals. But, you know, it's, you know, it's definitely going to ruffle a few feathers, I would imagine.
Well, when you tell somebody an alternative to the thing they've been studying for whatever, spent a fortune on hours and had, you know, learned all these things and become an expert, maybe even a doctor of some type, and you say this is another way to look at it, that can be that you're basically telling that person the underpinning of their life's work is not really valid in every respect. People don't like that. They don't like it.
No, you're pulling the rug from underneath them, so to speak, you know, and in the most gentle, kind way, because I know no one, you know, I make it very clear it's innocent. If you think about like innovation and create, you know, in the world, it's kind of like there's like how far we've come so far, you know, in so many areas of life in innovation, but like all we seem to have done around the psychological and therapeutic ways is gone backwards. You know, it's like we're not making an impact in mental health. We're not making an impact in addiction. It's kind of like there's 500 plus talking therapies. Somebody comes out with a new one every single week. Perhaps psychology is not the best way, you know, not the best way. It's not that there's some maliciousness going on or people are holding it up for the sake of it. You know, it's kind of like, really, we just know there's another direction to look in. It's almost like saying the world's flat, you know, it's that same argument, you know, until somebody sails over the edge and kind of goes, oh, it's not really flat. You know, it's kind of like, but we believed it was for hundreds of years, you know, it's the same thing. It's like we're looking in the direction of psychology for the answers, and we're creating, because we're infinitely innovative as human beings. We're coming up with new solutions. Oh, I've got this new therapy. I've created this new therapy, you know, DBT, CBT, ACT. There's a long list, EMDR, rapid transformational therapy. The list of new ones that are coming out are endless. But what about looking in a different direction? What about looking to our spiritual nature of who we are before the invention? I mean, man has innocently created the problem and the solution to it. You know, it's kind of like, but the solution is not really making a massive impact. There's a guy I like to quote, Thomas Insel. He was the director of the National Institute for Mental Health for 15 years in the US. And there's a quote that he said, you know, that says, we've spent $20 billion on mental health and we haven't moved the needle. You know, that's what he said, you know, and it's like, he's the head of the National Institute for Mental Health in the US for 15 years. And he said, we spent $20 billion and didn't move the needle. You don't have to take my word for it. You know, it's kind of like there's endless books written about this subject, you know, pulling apart the whole creation of the diagnosis model and the labeling and the pathologizing of normal human behavior. But we're so entrenched in it. You know, we've got so many beliefs, personal beliefs and so on. And we've all got a doctor or a psychiatrist or something where we've, you know, any of us that's been in the system, you know, it's kind of like where we've adopted this idea and found a way just to be okay amongst it all, you know, just surviving. It's like, but start looking into it all. And the whole thing is a house of cards. It just falls apart.
When I think about like all the diagnostic codes, those are great for billing, insurance reasons. That's about it.
It's innocent. It's not malicious.
No,
you know?
I don't think anyone's out to hurt anybody. I think they're actually out to help, and they're thinking this is going to work. And you know, I guess maybe it does on some level, but not ultimately. It's
a good point. Sometimes, you know, medication. I'm not against medication. I'm not against labels. Labels, what I say are they are an indicator of where somebody is, not who they are. You know, it's kind of like right now, maybe somebody needs some medication just to regulate their own mind if they're in a really bad space, or to save them from suicide. It's like whatever is needed in the moment, but there's a deeper conversation to have, a deeper seeing where, there's a place that's okay, that's true within all of us, and really pointing to that is for me the most important thing that I do for people, getting them curious about their experience beyond their thinking.
Well, I want to thank you for talking to me this morning. It's in my morning, your evening. It's very enlightening, and it's my favorite subject. Obviously, I've been sober a long time, and it's all about that experience of being a human being, and how do I do that, and what's the best way to do that, and how do I feel good much more time than I don't, which is the case these days, and I'm very happy to say that. And anything you would like to talk about in terms of people getting a hold of you or working with you or anything?
I just love to do this. If this makes a difference for one person, that would be really cool. If anyone really has heard something that they want to know more about, my coaching website, wideworldcoaching.com, or my addiction program, infiniterecoveryproject.com. I'm always open to a conversation, with anyone who's struggling, because I just heard, there's a little part of me that heard something in this conversation that I share that knew, I didn't know it intellectually. I didn't go, oh my God, that's the right thing, I need that. But there was a feeling part of me, like an instinctive part of me, that just thought, there's something about this that I need to know more about, and I always say to people, don't listen to the words, don't make sense of them intellectually, but trust your instinctive knowing. It's like if there's something in you that wants to know more about this, then follow that, because that's always guiding you back home.
What is the name of your podcast again? I'm sure people would love to hear that.
More conversations around this stuff is called Misunderstandings of the Mind. And there's, I interviewed about 40 different teachers of this kind of spiritual nature stuff, like all around different subjects around relationships, inner peace, self-help, anxiety, depression, addiction, all sorts of stuff like that. And they're all conversations really pointing to the true nature of who we are, beyond the pathologized creations of our sort of system.
Well, I'm going to check that out. I didn't know about it till just now. So fantastic. Yeah. That's, some of my favorite stuff. Well, thanks so much. You have a wonderful evening, and best of luck to you and all the great work you're doing. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. Thank you.
Much appreciation for you folks listening in to The Exploding Human. Check out the website, theexplodinghuman.com, and you can listen on YouTube at The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. I want to thank Jason Shiers once again for a wonderful talk. Please check him out on the internet. You can find links in the description. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.